Hey y'all, and welcome to Politibrawl. My name is Brian, and Marjorie Taylor Greene doesn't just take a wrecking ball to Melanie Stansbury, she goes after the entirety of the corruption that is in USAID. Let's dive in.
And I know that Donald Trump thinks that he's a king because his social media, of course, he keeps repeating this. But let me say this to you, Mr. Trump. 250 years ago, the people of this great nation rejected a reckless, abusive king, and we won't go back. And for the thousands of federal workers out there, the aid workers, the advocates, and the people around the world who are impacted by these reckless and heartless and harmful and disgusting cuts that are impacting people across the world, know that we see you, we stand with you, we are fighting for you, we are in the courts, we are in Congress, we are in our communities, and we will hold this administration accountable. And we will not abandon our allies or our humanity. So with that, I say to all of you, be strong. We will fight back.
I now recognize myself for closing remarks. And threats against the President of the United States will not be tolerated by anyone. And the math does add up. The United States is $36 trillion in debt. $36 trillion. There's plenty of spreadsheets that show that. As a matter of fact, there's a debt clock. You can watch it continue to tick upwards every single day. In fiscal year 2024, the government spent over $1.8 trillion more than it took in. And in fiscal year 2025, the interest on our debt is expected to exceed $1 trillion. That's everybody. I don't care how you vote. The American people do not want to continue to fund these propaganda campaigns, regime changes, terrorist, LGBTQ initiatives, diversity, equity, and inclusion, and other Democrat globalist initiatives. And even if the people did want to continue supporting such causes, guess what? They can support them with their own money through private donations. Because the reality is, everyone, we are flat out broke. If the U.S. government operated like any other private business, which it should, by the way, it would be completely bankrupt, and it would be out of business. Last year, we spent almost $2 trillion more than we took in. The United States government is not a charity, and it is not to be used and abused by the bureaucracy to implement the far left's agenda and impose it on the entire world. Again, 96% of all political contributions from USAID employees go to Democrat Party candidates or PACs. Perhaps that's why we're hearing all the complaining. The revolving door between USAID employees and NGOs that receive USAID funding is undeniable. Maybe we should consider investigating whether USAID funding has made it back to Democrat campaigns. Has it affected elections? The real questions the American people deserve to know answers to are these. Why are we funding 9 out of 10 news outlets in Ukraine? Why was former USAID Administrator Samantha Power visiting Hungary for the purpose of strengthening democratic institutions when Hungary is a country that is strongly democratic and members of the EU and NATO? Why was USAID co-funding joint programs with George Soros' Open Society to promote radical social agendas throughout the developing world? Why is USAID involved in the canceling of elections in Romania? Why is USAID involved in funding court changes in Albania that resulted in the prosecution of the Albanian opposition leader? Why is USAID funding censorship laws in Brazil to silence Bolsonaro? Why is USAID involved in funding the Syrian civil war? What we have learned here today is that USAID has been used as a tool by Democrats to brainwash the world with globalist propaganda to force regime changes around the world. But if USAID funded terrorism that resulted in the death of Americans, then this committee will be making criminal referrals. Lastly, if this is the funding that has come from the USAID, the United States Agency for International Development needs to be abolished.
First off, by the way, the American Revolution, we were mad at Parliament more than we were the king. The king definitely didn't help matters, and he pushed Parliament, but we rebelled because Parliament decided to levy new taxes on us, not the king. So first off, her history isn't even correct. And then to make matters even weirder, what Marjorie Taylor Greene is just unveiling here is the reality that USAID is not just a way to project soft power. What it really is an attempt to overthrow governments that are not as friendly to the global order as allegedly established. Okay? That's what USAID actually does. There are some good things that those programs do. But the fact that my tax dollars and your tax dollars have gone to this organization in order to fund pride parades in Angola, that's not a good use of taxpayer dollars. Okay? That's what private institutions are for. That's what charities are for. And remember, leftists don't believe in charity. Okay? It's just this weird thing that they do. They hate the idea of charity. They want everything controlled by the state. And after all, the definition of a fascist is everything serving the state, nothing outside of the state. It's an inherently leftist position, and that's what's been going on with USAID. And the Trump administration is trying to rip out the corruption as best as it possibly can, and boy is it needed. Hey y'all, here's the deal. Gold loves President Trump. Under Trump's first term, the price of gold soared 53%, and the price of silver jumped 51%. Since the start of the second term, gold has skyrocketed even higher, breaking records and even outperforming stocks. Here's what I like about precious metals like gold and silver. They have been used as a store of value for centuries. Governments can't easily manipulate it. They are used as hedges against market risk and, of course, against inflation. That's why I partnered with the amazing people over at Goldco. Goldco is an award-winning precious metals company. They are fans of this show, and they have helped millions of Americans just like y'all to purchase over $3 billion in gold and silver. Right now, you can get a free copy of their 2025 gold and silver kit. On top of that, you might also qualify for their amazing unlimited silver bonus offer. So don't wait on this. Go to politibrawlgold.com to learn more. That's politibrawlgold.com or call 855-644-GOLD. One of the things that Marjorie Taylor Greene has talked about here is something that just sort of stuck with me, resonated a little bit more than everything else, and that's Samantha Power going to Hungary. So let's dive into that. Administrator Samantha Power will travel to Budapest, Hungary from February 9th to 10th to build on the United States' long-standing partnership with the Hungarian people. Long-standing partnership? Weren't they part of the Iron Curtain? Weren't they part of the Eastern Bloc? But let's continue to dive in. USAID recently relaunched its work in several countries in Central Europe, including Hungary, where programs support independent Hungarian partner organizations working to protect the rule of law, strengthen democratic institutions and civil society, and support independent media. Really? The reason that this Hungarian trip is so poignant is because of the idea of Viktor Orban. Viktor Orban is essentially the strongman of Central Europe, and he's ruling Hungary by basically giving a giant middle finger to the rest of the EU, telling them, hey, no more immigration, we're going to have pro-family policies, and we're not going to accept the ridiculous debt burdens of the rest of the Mediterranean nations. because that is fundamentally the big issue that has been going on across Europe. They have been devastated by immigration policies. I've had the pleasure of having to travel to Berlin and Krakow. Berlin, Germany, obviously, Krakow, Poland. But in Germany, something that I couldn't help but notice, and this was back in the spring of 2015, I couldn't help but notice that there was a Middle Eastern cafe on nearly every single block. Poland, on the other hand, was definitely all Polish. So you start to notice a couple of things, and Viktor Orban has noticed something similar and has realized that, hey, the EU model of import people to come in and raise the GDP because we have a population issue, that's probably not going to work for us. So what does USAID do? We end up sending our own agents to undermine a man who says, hey, maybe Hungary shouldn't follow these policies, all because, we want to control things. We want to be the puppeteer. The United States isn't just the world police, we're the world puppeteers. That's not fair to the rest of the world. That's not fair to us. That's not fair to the way we're projecting our power. That's not fair to where our money is going. We've got problems in our own backyard that we need to take care of. And perhaps we need to take a page out of Viktor Orban's book and start having these more pro-family policies ourselves, because we're facing the similar problem to Europe. And that's been the theory behind why we import so many people, why we have allowed so much illegal immigration. We are facing a bit of a population problem, and it's one of the reasons why Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, and now the interest payments on all those programs have been so difficult to get a hold of. However, those theories aren't working. The majority of Europe is realizing that, hey, importing a bunch of people that don't want to be actual members of this nation, importing people to Sweden who don't want to be Swedish isn't a good idea. Okay, importing people to America that don't want to be Americans isn't a good idea. That is the fundamental issue with our immigration, and it's been a problem throughout the entirety of Europe for the past 40 years. Now the chickens are coming home to roost, and people are starting to scratch their chins and go, wait a minute, something isn't right here. And they're starting to elect people that aren't friendly to those policies, and how dare they go against the established agenda? How dare they? So Marjorie Taylor Greene is right to bang the gavel the way she's doing, which, by the way, that's how you're supposed to wield your power as a sitting chairman. She's doing it properly, and boy, is she doing the right thing at her position right now. Marjorie Taylor Greene has fully come into her own, and Miss Stansbury, I have one thing to say to you. Stop being a theater kid. Start governing. You might start changing your tune very quickly when you start to realize that that's not how you run a country. We are not a giant stage. We are a people that need help. We are a people that deserve good government. This theater kid governing style should not last and does not need to be reelected ever again. This nonsense needs to go. Folks, my name is Brian. Hope you enjoyed that segment here on Politibrawl. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Catch you on the next one. Until then, y'all have a good one.